Check, check. Chris, can you do it? Check. Can you hear us?
Good evening. We have our full committee here today. We are going to be starting with our budget review, and in a moment I'm going to be turning it over to Dr. Vidala. We're going to have a series of meetings over the next couple of months anyway, and we'll be establishing our schedule here in the next, probably the next 24 hours, 48 hours, coming up with our schedule, and we'll certainly be advertising as required. But we wanted the superintendent and his team to present their FY23 school budget, and don't think we'll get into many questions today, more just receiving all the information, and then, like I said, we'll set up some future meetings to make sure that we thoroughly review the budget. So, Dr. Vidala, why don't we just turn it over to you? If there's no questions, we'll just send it over to you, Dr. Vidala.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleased to be presenting this budget at the beginning of March. I know the last 2 years we were presenting much later. So when we start thinking about the budget, we always want to start with our priorities. And so we think of the budget as a value document. And this year we want to focus on acceleration, strengthening and expanding our current programming, and really digging deep and addressing the holistic needs of our students. And at the forefront of this, as we start to try to return to more of a normal school year, we want to really address learning loss and mental health and put those at the forefront. And we have our vision of hope for all of our students, high expectations, optimism, personalized learning, and equity and access that drives everything that we do. So just to go back to last year's process, and this is, again, we're in a little bit of a unique process because we do have these ESSER funds. So as you recall, last year we had 3 funding sources. We had the Chapter 70 funds plus the contribution from the city, the minimum contribution plus an additional contribution that we had, and we voted on a $76.6 million budget. And that was the working budget that was drafted. As you recall, there was about $4 million that were put into ESSER 2 and some other grants that we had. So our anticipated cost last year to run the district was $80,653,444. Now, $444. So that's what we had used as an operating budget of about $80 million. However, that did not include the COLA raise that was voted in for our employees after we had voted the budget. So with about a $50 million salary line, 2% of that was about $1 million. So all in all, this bottom number here is the actual cost to run the district, about $81,677,377. So we're looking at that as our anticipated cost, so sort of our baseline number. So when I think about the process, and I really want to thank everyone who's been involved. There's been hours and hours of work from our business department to our principals, our school committee members, our department heads, and our directors, and of course the mayor and his finance team to get to where we are. So step 1 was to create a budget template or a working document based on the actual cost from FY22 plus our anticipated step and lane changes to develop a level service number. And then we went through a process of meeting with each principal and each department head individually to identify the additional budget priorities for FY23. And that's identifying the needs based on this current school year. And then We try to meet individually with all the school committee members, whether we met on the phone or just touched base via email or had in-person meetings, and as well as the mayor and his finance team, to meet individually and identify additional budget priorities to make sure that this first document is really identifying all the priorities that we have for the district. And so we've completed those steps, and that's where we have the first working document. The next two are the most important. It's to work collaboratively with the school committee and the city council to create the appropriated budget for the vote, so that it'll be ready for the vote. And then finally, step 6 is to communicate the other funding sources that will prevent us from doing reductions or cuts. So what's a little different than a typical year is, if you recall last year, we proposed the first budget number, which is a big number, and then we talk about what's going to be the appropriated number, and then the difference is covered by ESSER. So we have significant money in ESSER 3 over the course of the next 2 years, which will be able to fund a portion of our budget this year and a portion of our budget next year. So, as we look at what's the number for a level service budget, so as we put in all of the position, supplies, and resources that were maintained from the FY22 appropriated budget and from ESSER 2, we put all of those back into the budget, we come to a number of $80,700,856. So we made adjustments to underfunded line items based on where we are now, including our health insurance, our out-of-district tuitions, teacher severance, and transportation. And then next, we identify areas for improvement and expansion. So what I'll do now is go through location by location and talk about what the principals and each of our directors identified as their critical needs to be included in this budget. So location 1 is the Brown. They really want to focus on reading intervention for the K-2 students and additional special ed teachers to make sure that their programming is met and the class size is reduced. At the Burke School, they wanted to maintain staffing and ordinary budgets, as well as providing some support for their co-teaching program, which will enter year 2. And then they also had talked about having some instructional leadership through their assistant principal position. And so you'll see this in a couple places for our elementary schools of really morphing the assistant principal role to more of an instructional support role as we start to improve on our mathematics instruction with our new Math in Focus, and as we adopt the new ELA curriculum over the next year or so, we want to make sure that we're providing enough support for all of our classrooms. At the Carroll, they were focused on ELL support as well as math interventionists. The center also focused on ELL support and some social emotional needs as well as special education support. The McCarthy was looking for ELL support, which you'll see as a trend with our changing demographics, as well as the instructional coach AP model at their level as well. The South School, which will be receiving some new students from the Welch, will be looking for general ed teachers as well as ELL and social emotional support. The Welch would like to, even though some of their students are leaving for the next 2 years as part of the building project, they want to make sure they're maintaining their ELL, special ed, and SEL supports. So when we see their budget, when we go through what they're requesting, although their enrollment will decrease for the next 2 years, they want to make sure that they're still receiving the same amount of support because the kids who they still have require that need. The West School is looking for additional academic support through the instructional coach / AP, as well as ELL. They've seen a change in their demographic as well and want to make sure that they have ELL support, as well as expanding their special education program. At the Higgins, we're looking for some reading support, special education teachers to support that transition to grade 6. That's really an area that Mr. Busey and his team are focusing on, as well as some crisis intervention support that is being funded through the special education budget. At the high school, at Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, they'd be looking, their numbers have increased, their enrollment has increased over the past 3 years, so we'd be looking to add a guidance counselor, as well as a school adjustment counselor that would support all students, not just students on IEPs, but we're seeing an increased need there for school adjustment counselors. They would like to have the same model in their administration as they do at the Higgins, so an additional dean to support that grade 9 transition. ELL support, they would be looking to increase visual and performing arts teachers, as well as increase their ordinary budget to support each department individually. So as we get to that, we'll go through where all of those additions are. The PLA was looking to offer specific summer programming for their PLA students, as well as maintain their staffing and ordinary budgets. And the vocational program was looking to maintain their staffing levels. However, one of their teachers has moved on, and they would be looking to add, from the culinary department, add in electronics and engineering. The demand for that program has increased, and right now, I think they had 3 culinary arts teachers. They can maintain that with 2. However, they only have 1 electronics and engineering teacher, so they like to repurpose that position to electronics and engineering. And then we updated a number of their ordinary lines to make sure, because of increases in the food and supplies, they wanted to make sure that they had enough money in those ordinary lines. In terms of curriculum development, you'll see a big increase here in this ordinary budget to fund Mastery Connect, the new ELA materials, as well as translation services. A lot of these things were paid out of ESSER, which again, we can move back to ESSER, but the first round of the budget is everything is in one number, so we can see what it costs to run the district. In performing arts, they're looking to maintain their staffing levels, adjustments in their ordinary lines to support some equipment upgrades in the auditorium, as well as in some of their supplies. So making sure that performing arts is fully funded. In athletics, we see an increase in the transportation budget, which is actually found in transportation, as well as the salary for the athletic trainer has increased through our partnership. And then there's a number of ordinary budget lines based on the needs that Mr. DeRoches and his team have come up with to make sure that officials, supplies to support health, PE, and athletics are all fully funded. So we'll see an increase in the contractual services line, as well as some others. Special education, we've seen an increased need, especially in our younger group. So we'll be looking to add a team chairperson, some speech support, BCBA and school psychologists, as well as increase the translation services. We're seeing that number has gone up across the board. We want to make sure that we fund that appropriately, as well as an increase in the out-of-district tuitions. We've seen that all of our out-of-district schools have been raising their tuition, and we want to make sure that we're funding that appropriately. The next line is our staff development line, and making sure that we have money for teacher stipends to increase our contracted services and supplies. So this is one big area that will likely be funded through ESSER moving forward, but to be able to bring in people, if we're adopting a new ELA curriculum, or if we're putting in a new addressing the needs of the kids. We want to bring in some trainers that we can pay through contracted services, but also pay teachers through stipends in order to receive that training and feel as though they're comfortable. And then ultimately, we'd like to create a train-the-trainer model where we're empowering our staff and it can be sustainable, and we would pay them to train, pay our own teachers to train their colleagues. Within central administration, we're looking to add an additional assistant superintendent position to work with student services, as well as facilities and our transportation and food services. We'd be looking to add an ELL director. At this point, right now, we don't have a director that's district-wide, and where all of our elementary schools are looking for increased ELL support, having a director is something that we just had tier focus monitoring through DESE. Having a director to oversee that would be helpful. We increased the PD reimbursement lines to make sure that we're funding that, that's in the contracts, as well as we have a salary reserve line, increase in substitutes and teacher severance, as well as our unemployment. So some of those things we've identified that have been overspent a little bit this year, we want to make sure that we adjust those salaries. The next group is technology. We had to adjust the supply and equipment lines to make sure that we support the expanded technology across the district. So as you know, 2 years ago, we went fully one-to-one K-12, as well as getting these new Promethean boards and other supplies. We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure to be able to support that. And then we have a new line here, which is Peabody Prep, or our virtual school, which is location 46. We want to make sure that we maintain the current staffing this year. And again, this can be funded through ESSER, but it's in the budget for the first round here, so we see the total number. And then really making sure that we're able to support growth of this program through ESSER funding. So just a recap of the additional positions in the budget. We'll be looking at elementary interventionists, ELL teachers, exploring instructional coaches at the elementary level, school adjustment counselors, Higgins special ed, high school school adjustment counselor and guidance counselor, as well as a dean, increasing the translation services, a director of ELL, the second assistant superintendent position, and then increasing PD technology, supplies, and materials, as well as making sure we're supporting performing arts and athletics through their equipment and supplies lines. So each of those all together add an additional $859,400 to the budget. The level service budget of $85,700 gives us a total cost to run the district this year of $86,468,256. And so how do we pay for it? That's the big question. So one of the biggest reasons why we're looking to include some additions this year is we did see an increase in our Chapter 70 funds. And we were anticipating this when we talked a little bit about this last year. We're in the second year of implementation of the Student Opportunity Act, and this is a 7-year phase-in. So if you'll notice this bolded line here, Chapter 70, in FY22, we received $23 million from the state. And in FY23, we're receiving $30.8 million, so a $7.5 million increase in our Chapter 70 funds from the state. So that is where we're looking to add some things to the district and really make improvements. So a lot of questions are, why did we see such a drastic increase? One of the biggest areas is the state is really improving the way they fund low-income students. And in FY22, we had about 2,300 of our 6,000 students that were categorized as low-income. As we enter FY23, we'll be looking at 2,800, or an increase of 500 students. So the pandemic really hit Peabody quite a bit. We're making sure that we're capturing all of those kids and we're providing the services that they need. So in addition to the additional funding, we also, they give a reimbursement number based on your percentage. So in FY22, we were at 41% low-income students. So that's like decile 7. So we reimbursed at a certain number. Now we're at 49%, and we're in decile 9. So almost 50% of our students are categorized as low income. So we receive an additional funding mechanism for that. So there's a higher multiplier. So that's one of the reasons why we've increased our Chapter 70 funds so drastically. So this is the exact same slide as at the beginning, and if you look at this one-page memo, this is the left-hand side of that memo of how we got to the number 81,667. So you'll recall that we voted for 76, and we added $4 million into ESSER last year. So this year, what we're proposing is we have an $86,468,256 for the proposed budget in draft 1. The way that we'll fund that is $30 million from Chapter 70, $52 million as our anticipated municipal contribution, for a total, the appropriated vote this year would be $83,106,902. That would be the proposed number, and we've talked with the mayor and the city finance director, that would be the proposed number for the vote, and the difference is about $3.3 million, which we would fund out of ESSER 3. So right now we have $7.5 million in ESSER 3, and we'd be looking to spend $3.3 million of that in this year's budget. So that was a lot. So I'll give everybody a minute to sort of digest that and answer questions that you may have on how we got to this number, and then if you'd like, we can go through the budget book and look at how it impacts each location.
Dr. Vidala, would you mind just touching on the status of ESSER after this payment? How much time do we have to utilize those monies? Kind of a little bit of what you see coming.
Yep, absolutely. So we have ESSER 3 would have $7.5 million in it, and we have 2 fiscal years to spend it. So it has to be spent by June 30th of 2024. So we have next year, which we can spend money out of ESSER 3, and the following fiscal year as well. And so beyond that, a lot of people are asking about, is there going to be a cliff? Is there a funding cliff? And the way that we're structuring this, we do not believe so. The people we've met with at DESE and our finance people that we're working with, we're only in year 2 of the Student Opportunity Act, where Peabody received a big bump this year. So we anticipate not another $7 million bump, which would be wonderful, but we do expect that to increase each year. With our changing demographics, we also expect other federal entitlement grants, such as Title I, to increase this year as well. So we'll get those numbers in July, and we'll be able to plan accordingly moving forward. So we feel comfortable with this number, that it's not setting us up for a funding cliff, that we're not looking to be cutting positions in 2 years. We're looking to phase out the ESSER money and put more things in that, like adopting the ELA curriculum, buying ahead, so purchasing maybe 5 years worth of those licenses, so that we can plan ahead and make sure that we have those as we come out of the ESSER funding and into the more traditional funding sources. We think that we're going to be in good shape.
I figured it would be difficult to really get into too many questions today. I didn't anticipate that we would really have a, I don't think it'd be easy or fair to kind of put you in that position to ask a lot of questions today. So certainly, though, I want to open it up for questions. Mr. Hockman, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Vidala, thank you for the presentation. It's clear that you and your team and everyone that you mentioned that collaborated on the development of this budget put in a lot of time and effort, and it's appreciated. It's noticeable and appreciated. And while I have 1,000 questions, I think the mayor's right. Today's the night for digesting and absorbing all of the information that you just talked to us about, and also in the materials that were provided to us that we haven't even gone through yet here. But I did want to follow up on the mayor's question, if I can, through you, to Dr. Vidala in regard to ESSER. And we probably talked about this last year when we learned of ESSER. But in addition to the award that we received and the time frame by which we use it or lose it, what other limitations does ESSER provide? I mean, are we... So for example, if I wanted to replace windows in a building, would I be able to use ESSER funds for something like that?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it's something that we could look at. I think it'd be more probably ventilation would probably be a better, but I think windows you could argue if it was energy efficient. So we focused on sort of trying to get the ESSER funds as close to the student as possible. So things like these Promethean boards and the virtual schooling and things like that. We've tried to bring the funding as much to the students as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. And again, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that. We want this funding is designed to allow students and staff to catch up on some lost learning time, and money spent on students and with staff to improve their ability to deliver services and content to students is always worthwhile. And I didn't mean to put you really on the spot in terms of what I'm sure ESSER is a large document that contains a lot of language that those lawyer types put together, and some of those politicians also. Perhaps if you could, in the intervening time between now and our next meeting, either get us a copy of the grant or those restrictions or
Sure.
parameters by which we're able to spend the money. I think it'll give us, as a committee, a better idea and allow us to formulate better questions.
Sure. Absolutely. And, and I think sort of one of the biggest things I'd like to take from tonight is if there's any major objections to anything that we're talking about putting in, that's one thing. We want to make sure that everything that, we've talked about with the committee and the principals is something that, we can all support moving forward. Not asking to support every single thing that's in it, but if there's anything, and, it doesn't have to be tonight, we can obviously meet individually as well as we gear up. But if there's many major objections, please let us know as soon as possible so we can make adjustments.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Mr. Olympio?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vidal and your team for putting this together, all the hours and all the work. Just a general question. I didn't see on the list anywhere any additional para support. Do you plan on adding positions for paras? And really more specifically, there's been some concern over the past year at the McCarthy School, the preschool, that they really need some extra help there, where some of the students, are challenging, and that they've really been thin over there at the preschool.
Yes, absolutely. So 3 areas specifically where we'd be looking is the Brown School, the McCarthy, and the West.
Okay.
So when we say special ed support, it's teachers and paras.
Okay.
And so we
Okay.
can talk about, where that goes. Some of the positions at the McCarthy will be funded through their revolving account, because they
Okay.
do have income that comes in through tuitions. But we would be looking in those 3 specific areas to increase the number of paras, as well as some of our programs at the middle and high school.
Okay, great. And will we be receiving more of the backup to some of these?
Yes, so at the next meeting, we'll have the full binder.
Awesome.
That'll have all the backup. So wanted to give you sort of
Yep.
what would be on the website, and then all the big pieces, and if, there's any major changes now, we can do that and then include,
Okay.
for the next one will be the big budget book.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. I'm all set.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Mr. Amico?
Through the chair, thank you, Dr. Vidal, and to your central office team. Great job. I know budget time is very difficult, but we're going to all work together and do the best we can for kids. And that's what I really wanted to talk about. When we were shut down and kids were on Zoom, we're coming on 2 years now, we're finally getting out of it, hopefully. Our biggest push to get back to school in a hybrid model was for kids. Our biggest push to get to full-time in-person was for kids. So I'm going to digest all of this, and I do see some incredible things here, items that I absolutely agree. And, for example, interventionists and counselors, we can't hire enough counselors over the next 5 years. From what I'm seeing and from what I've talked to a bunch of teachers across the state, here in the city, we can't have enough counselors. So I see that, I love it. We need to hire as many as we can. The other part that we really need to look at, and we brought some groups in here a couple of weeks ago, and maybe about a month ago, it's the activities that the kids do after school. And those high school kids lost out more than anyone. And not that elementary and middle school kids didn't lose out, but now they have a chance to catch up. We're gonna have a chance to catch up on their activities, their education, but the high school kids, they're never gonna get back those 2 years. So I'm gonna make a push, really, and I didn't see it in here, but definitely to look at the band, look at performing arts, and look at athletics, and really see if we can move some monies in there. Uniforms, equipment. We had a bunch of groups in here that were talking about, what they have to pay for and what we're not supporting them on in payment. So I really want to make a push for that, and I just think that we're still at that part where we have to support our kids and support our teachers, and I just really want to make it so that this budget, and there's a lot in here that does support them, but I think we can do more, and it's incumbent upon us to do it. We had groups here, they were asking, we get phone calls, we get emails. These people, these are people who see it firsthand. These are kids who see it firsthand. Let's try to make some of those groups, some of those activities, the band, chorale, performing arts, athletics, let's try to make them whole. And that may include what, Mr. Hockman mentioned about, looking at some of these buildings or looking at the baseball field. I think we have some money here to, not to play with, it's definitely not play money, but, sometimes you have to take care of what you have before we can add more. And again, I agree with Dr. Vidal and the central office team. We need all these. You know, I've been asking for an assistant superintendent at central office since 2015. We're the largest district probably in the state with one assistant superintendent. But we need an ELL director. We need to support our athletics. We need to, change over those band uniforms that, from what I've heard, are 20 years old. I mean, that's on us. That's our time now to make these changes and support those groups. So I'll yield.
And if I may, I'm pleased to announce that the band uniforms have been ordered. So we got that notice. That'll be in this fiscal year, because that was something that was very important. And again, when people bring things to us, we address them. And I think that's how this system works, and it works well. And John Simmons has been amazing at bringing things up. And so, to your point, in the ordinary budgets, as you look at the performing arts one, which is on page 18, their ordinary is up over $20,000. And the athletics ordinary is up $65,000. And again, we really went through line by line with each of those directors to make sure that, what you were saying was loud and clear, and that we're making sure we do that. And again, to Mr. Olympio's point, additional paras, so as we go through line by line, we'll be able to go through that, because, like I said, what was brought to your attention has been heard loud and clear, and this is the time to put that into the budget and to make sure that we're addressing those needs. Because I do think, in addition to what we've already talked about, the experiences that kids remember are really important. And I think that's something that we'll really be focusing on in this budget and beyond, is our student experience and those things that they have, that they experience, that they remember forever. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, Mr. Miko, you still have-
And thank you, Dr. Vidal. I know a lot of the band kids are excited about that. And again, I'm not saying that these items here in front of us, we need these items. This is a fundamental look at, education as a whole, and the lack of funding that we've had over the years. And finally, we are getting the funding. And these are things that we need. I'm not saying that they're not. But for me, if I have to choose between a kid and something else, I'm choosing the kid every time. So, and again, I would love to add all these. I think they're all needed, and I thank you for putting this together. And again, thank you for the band uniforms. That's gonna make a difference for a lot of kids.
Yeah, that's terrific news. Thank you, Mr. Miko. Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Through the chair to Dr. Vidala, thank you for this. I appreciate the layout, the additions. I think we spoke before, and I told you how we like to see what we're losing, what we're gaining, those type of things. I know that we're going to get more in-depth, and we're going to get the bigger binders, and we can go line by line. Just had a couple of things to ask you and to make you aware of, so that when I start looking at the binder book at home, one question I had was on the list of the proposed budgets on central administration. One of the things listed here says negotiations. What is that?
So it's a salary reserve line that we budget already, knowing that we're going into a contract year.
Oh, for that money,
That's a
right?
salary, yeah, we have a salary reserve line.
Well, you skipped over it, and I was just wondering, I'm
Yes.
like, wait. is
Yes,
that- okay.
I said salary reserve, not
Yeah, and
negotiations.
then I wanted to make sure, I was like,
Yes.
oh, I was
Yeah,
thinking
so
something else.
So that, there's a line in there, as we anticipate going into a contractual year.
Yep.
We have a
I know what
a
that
line
one is,
just
yep.
to make sure that we're not overextended.
Yeah. Couple of things that I'm going to want to look at and talk about. One is the prep program.
Yep.
That's something that I want to really see how it went, how that budget looks, how many students, where we're going with that, to see what direction and funding for that and
Absolutely.
that position and some of the positions within it. In regards to central administration, in regards to adding an assistant superintendent, those type of things, ELL director. Definitely interested in hearing about those additions, but I will tell you, personally, for me, I'm a member who likes to see things from the ground up and not from the top down. So I'll be really focusing on all of our schools have exactly everything that they need in regards to starting from toilet paper to paras to teaching positions before I even will consider going up higher. And that's we've talked about it before, and I told you that anyway. So that's something that I'll be looking at. But I do, this is a great list, I appreciate it. These things all seem to be like the type of things we would have heard during our school improvement plans. So this is directly from the principals, the things
Yes.
that they need.
Yep,
That is
exactly.
definitely something that we look for. But I am looking forward to looking through the line items, and, it looks good. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and, we'll put together all of these things, and I couldn't agree more with the fact that we need to start at the student level, and you'll notice that last year, we added a lot of special ed and ELL, as well as general ed teachers, to make sure we lowered the class size. The more we do that, the more we do need to support them, and so an ELL director, the number of ELL teachers that we've hired, we're going to need to support them through an ELL director. And that's the same thing with the assistant superintendent. The more staff we have, we do need some of those, but first, we have to make sure that the teachers are there and that the support is there through paras and teachers and supplies before we add those things. So to your point and to Mr. Amico's point, hopefully this budget, you don't have to choose. That's what we're trying to do, is make sure that everything is included in here and that we're not having to make those hard decisions, because we've been fiscally responsible over the past couple of years, and we've worked hard to make sure that we've advocated for that funding, and we've gotten some grant funding as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Okay, so if there's no other question, Mr. Hockman, turn it over to you.
No, thank you. I thought we were just going to be a little more general tonight, but we're getting somewhat more specific, which is great. So I think share Ms. Carpenter's philosophy quite a bit when it comes to the budget. I look at, and we talked about this, Doc, and this it shouldn't be a surprise to you, but we're essentially funding 2 assistant superintendent positions right now. One is the director of the prep, but I could argue that we have 4 assistant superintendent positions that we're funding, and they're not all quite up to that level of salary, but we have a community high school that doesn't have a large population. It's a population we need to serve, and it's an important position. We have a Peabody Learning Academy, which also has a small population and a significant salary for a principal. We have a prep, and Dr. Lord, I forget your exact title there, but director, and I don't mean if that's to diminish your title, if it's something other than that. But we have quite a few administrators that we've added over the course of time prior to you arriving, Doc, but certainly since Ms. Carpenter and myself, Ms. Dunn, have been on the committee. So we do have some more administrators, might not be assistant superintendents, and perhaps we need to start talking, or perhaps it would be conducive to start talking about identifying multiple roles that some of those people can undertake. So I don't disagree that we would benefit from an ELL director, but I'm, I always fall back to, I'm not an educator, and I respect your positions and your guidance and your information that you give us to help us try to make the best choices we can, and I don't know that an ELL director for our district going from 0 FTEs to 1 FTE is the way to go. Is it a 0.5 FTE with, perhaps a PLA director picking up the other 0.5? I don't know. I'm just saying I'd like to have that conversation, because I agree with you. If we're hiring staff or anybody in the district to perform a function and we deem it to be a valuable function, otherwise we wouldn't add them, they do need support, right? Clerical support and other supports, so that we can ensure that everybody has what they need to do the best that they can do, all with the goal of providing, right, the best instruction and the best care for our children. It seems to me that we're looking towards, talking about administrators, the instructional coaching piece that seems to be attractive to most of the elementary schools to be added to the assistant principal position. I'm not sure, but I don't think all of the schools that have identified that function as being attractive have full-time assistant principals. So I'm guessing that at some point during this process, we're going to talk about full-time assistant principals at elementary schools. And you and I have had that conversation in the past, and I've talked to other committee members, and you know, I started off in the position, you know, that we don't need full-time assistant principals, you know, going back 4 or 5 years when we started introducing full-time assistant principals. And I'm probably more on the other side of that coin at this point, as, you know, we've gone through the last couple of years and see the emotional and social pieces and the value of assistant principals in buildings and things like that. So, you know, I think over time I'm probably, you know, pushed over there. But again, you know, if we're going to go with full-time assistant principals in the elementary school, and admittedly, I have not gone through the budget book yet, so I don't know if they're in there or not, but again, I'm making an assumption. You know, is there something else along the lines of the administrative functions that are proposed that they might be able to absorb? And again, these are all rhetorical at this point. I'm not expecting any sort of response at all. And there are, you know, a few other, I'm happy to hear that we have uniforms for the band. That's exciting. I'm happy, you know, we're fortunate in the regard that ESER is available to us, and there's a reason for it. But we still need to get into the meat and bones of this and figure out, you know, where that balance is between what's proposed and your vision. And I'm happy, you know, a superintendent a long time ago, I'm eating up all the time, but I feel like Jimmy Valvano at the ESPYs. But a superintendent a long time ago, when I first started this job, asked me about, you know, do I put out the budget that I, for my vision for the district, or do I put out a budget that, you know, isn't going to splash the headlines? And my thought was, do what you're doing. Put out the budget that you think is your vision for the district. It's your district, and, you know, we entrust you with it, and I'm happy to see you put out your vision, because that's important, I think, for us and everyone else watching and everyone that populates these buildings 5 days a week, to understand, you know, where you're looking to take the district and what you need or think you need to get that done. So anyway, thank you very much. We'll talk more about that stuff, and I'll talk to you, I'm sure, in the intervening time.
Thank you, Mr. Huckman. So as I mentioned before we started, I want to kind of gather some information. All of us need to take in everything, some good questions, certainly things we're going to be discussing in more detail as we go along here in the weeks and months ahead. I'd like to coordinate with Dr. Vidala, Marge Macarelli, when you think the book is ready for distribution, and we can time it appropriately. And then I can propose some meetings to everybody for some dates upcoming, so we can really dig into the budget and do our work. So, but this was terrific, I think, to have this first meeting, present a general overview, and then that gives us a taste of what's coming, and we can get ready to dig a little deeper once we get the full book. So, with that, if there's no objections, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I think we suspend. Motion to suspend.
Motion to suspend until a future date. All right, motion made by Mr. Huckman, seconded by Mr. Miko, all in favor. Thank you, and we'll get started here in a few minutes with the John Olympio rule, 7 p.m. Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Yes, so this is Larry.
At 7:08. We did have a meeting earlier, first budget review, and I mentioned during that time that we'll be having a number of meetings coming up, and we'll be setting that schedule here very shortly and advertising and letting everybody know where that stands. We have a number of items today, but as always, I want to start with a moment of silence. If everybody could please stand for a moment of silence, and then to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do have, item number 2, we do have one set of minutes to be reviewed and approved tonight. It's the minutes from the February 8, 2022 regular school committee meeting. I'd put those forward for discussion. Mrs. Dunn?
Motion to receive and approve.
Heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn to receive and approve the meeting minutes of February 8, 2022 regular school committee meeting, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Any comments? Seeing none, roll call vote for approval, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Terrific, thank you. And then one other item, approval of bills. We have 2 warrants. Mrs. Carpenter, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, geez, yeah, that's right. We did switch. We have officially switched. Mr. Olympio, I'll turn over to, you now get to approve $5 million.
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 4982 in the amount of $3,154,692.29 dated March 8, 2022, subject to audit.
Second?
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mr. Olympio for approval of warrant number 4982. That motion was seconded by Mrs. Carpenter. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter? Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 4983 in the amount of $1,628,841.19 dated March 8, 2022, subject to audit.
Second?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olympio. You've heard the motion for approval of warrant number 4983. The motion was seconded by Mrs. Carpenter. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Terrific, thank you. I did want to mention earlier, I should have mentioned that we are being broadcast live by Peabody Access TV, as well as our minutes being recorded by our recording secretary, Leanna Harris. And we will be opening up a public participation to allow for call in under a Facebook platform. And as usual, if somebody would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting. If there's no objection, I'd like to hold continued business and go to the superintendent's report. We have some special guests here today. And if there's no objection, I'd like to specifically go to item 5.2, the presentation, and invite, well, I'll turn it over to Dr. Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very excited about this one. We have Chief Griffin here with one of our SROs, Eric Ritchie, about a new program. And we're very excited about this program. Officer Ritchie came to me and had asked about the potential of bringing a comfort dog into the schools, and I couldn't be happier about this. Many districts are exploring this option, but Peabody is one of the first to be able to implement this, and possibly the first on the North Shore. There are a number of districts that are looking into it. I know our neighbors are looking into it, and we're going to beat them to that, so we're always excited when we do that. But we've talked about the importance of mental health and really addressing the needs of our students, and we've seen through our therapy dog programs that having a dog, especially a trained dog, in a situation can ultimately de-escalate a situation, whether it's with adults or kids. But we've seen the benefits of kids being able to read to dogs, kids being able to just feel comfortable. And, you know, as you see, when you meet this little angel over here, everybody just melts. So I just want to give a ton of credit to our school resource officer and our chief for bringing this to us. We do have Dave Bonfanti here tonight, too. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to them, Mayor. I know that this is something you support very much as well.
Terrific, absolutely. I thought this was a wonderful idea. I think you said things, laid it out very well, but I wanted to invite Chief Griffin, Sergeant Bonfanti, and our school resource officer, Eric Ritchie, to join us here at the table, and I'd ask you to share the microphone. But Officer Ritchie, if you could maybe talk about the program and introduce us to a new employee.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Betancourt, Superintendent Videla, and members of the school committee. Tonight, I'm here to speak regarding a comfort dog program started by the Peabody Police Department. This program has been in the works since pre-COVID by Chief Thomas Griffin and Detective Sergeant Bonfanti, who's a big part of this program. And now I have the honor of being the handler of the comfort dog. So I'd like to introduce the newest member of the Peabody Police Department, our comfort dog, Ella. She's a 9-week-old black English lab. She was bred at Crosslots Farm in Ware, New Hampshire. With the full support of the O'Donnell family, Ella is named in honor of Ella O'Donnell, an extraordinary young girl that we live on in our memories and hearts of everyone in our community. Ella has previously attended the Peabody South Memorial School and was described by all as a resilient, brilliant, and joyous little girl whose memory will live on for many years to come. Ella had the ability to put smiles on everyone's face she encountered, just as I hope and the department hopes that our new furry police member will as well. Just a little bit on emotional support animals, such as Ella. They contribute to the community in many ways. Emotional support dogs assist with helping students regulate an assortment of challenges, including emotional and behavioral concerns. Additional emotional support animals aid in supporting students through environment changes that, with the help from dogs like our Ella, help adjusted to the modifications needed for utmost student success. Ella will serve not only as a pillar of the comfort within our community, but will help enrich the educational support of the Peabody school system has to offer for all our students. Ella will be available for all Peabody schools, from the elementary to the high school. She will attend classroom discussions with me. She will greet students as they arrive to schools. Ella will attend school functions during the school year. She will be visibly at all school sporting events and other events throughout the community. Ella, as a comfort dog, will not be trained as a patrol function dog, which includes drugs, EOD searches for suspect or missing person. She will not do any of that. Ella's only job will be a comfort dog designated to be there to comfort any and all members of the community. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be in here. I would also like to thank the mayor, the superintendent, and the chief and the school committee. We have a great community here, and we have 4 wonderful school resource officers, and with the support we get from everybody here, including the community, is wonderful. Thank you all.
Well, Officer Ritchie, I just want to thank you. That was very well said, very well put together. I was very fortunate. We had a visit from Ella yesterday at City Hall, and I got a petition from City Hall employees that they want a comfort dog at City Hall too. So we'll have to take that up in future discussions, budget discussions. But I think you said things so well as Dr. Vidala did. Ella's going to make a difference for our community and for our city and for our students and really the whole school community. So I was just when I heard about this program and it was brought forward, I just immediately embraced it and think it's going to be a wonderful thing. So I thank you for being here, and thank you, Eric. The dog will be living with you and your family, and it's a very special thing you're doing. So thank you for that, you and your family.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Officer Ritchie or Chief Griffin or Sergeant Bonfanti or Ella? And is that a perfect name or what?
A couple of things. We worked closely with a number of different departments who have had dogs. Wakefield's had one for about a year now, and we're learning from what what's going on with them in terms of any kind of questions or issues. So we already have a lot of plans in place and policies in place that'll alleviate anybody that has any kind of concerns or anything like that. So we just wanted to come forward and ask for permission to be able to have the dog coming into the schools from the school committee where you guys are in charge, so.
Well, so certainly we can open that up for a motion. I think there's a good chance of passing, because I would not want to be the one to vote against this. Mrs. Carpenter?
Before the motion, that's going to be, it's going to be a tough one. Just thank you for everything that you do every day. Truly appreciate it. And this is so awesome. I am so excited to see Ella in action. This couldn't come at a better time. I'm sure a lot of our kids could really use this. Probably some of our adults too. And, it's, what a great name. This is really, really a great name. One question, with most dogs in the police department, there's training for the drugs, there's training for different things. There's training for comfort?
A comfort dog, only training they need is obedience, because we don't want her to do anything else. We don't want her sniffing or tracking. We just want her to be there to comfort the children and be friendly, and also the staff, because I know we're going to have staff, just as the police department. I've already had numerous phone calls for officers to come in to see the dog and everything. Puts a smile on your face, I can tell you that.
This is so great. I think we might need her during budget sessions. Can you bring her back? Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve Ella, the comfort dog, to be allowed in all of our school buildings as
Second.
needed.
Second.
Terrific. Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. You heard the motion.
Training that's going to take place, obedience training, and, other areas where if there was an allergy issue, that safety precautions would be put in place and measures like that. So I just wanted to really just say that just for the viewing audience. You've already answered those questions for me, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to support Ms. Carpenter's motion here. So thanks again.
Terrific. We do have a motion. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympia?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is terrific. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no objection, I'd like to stay in the superintendent's report. We do have a couple of special guests as well here, and I'd like to turn back over to Dr. Vidala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have two introductions, new staff members. One is a current staff member who is being appointed. So I'd like to begin by introducing our new vocational director. Shannon Spinoza is a registered nurse. She earned her bachelor's of science degree from UMass Lowell and holds a master's degree in education from Westfield State. Shannon spent 10 years in the field prior to entering the teaching profession. However, she has continued her field work throughout her teaching career as well. Shannon began teaching at Shawshene Valley Tech before coming to Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, where she has served as the medical assisting instructor since 2015. Shannon's students are consistently prepared to enter the workforce or to continue their education in the medical field. She has taken a leadership role over the past few years in our CTE department, and she was the unanimous choice of the interview committee. So please join me in welcoming Shannon Spinoza as our next vocational director. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. Certainly, this came as no surprise to us, because we've been able to watch what you've been able to do for our students for a number of years now, and you've done a terrific job representing our city and helping our students. So, speaking for me, but I really think I could speak for all of us. This was very well received by all of us, and we wish you nothing but the best, and we'll try to do the very, very best we can to support you in every way. So, any comments? Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Spinoza, it's really wonderful to welcome you here as the Director of CTE Programs. You have so much enthusiasm already about the entire program, and especially through the years with the Medical Assistance Program, and you've built that up, and it's just really amazing to see how our students are able to go right out into the workforce with a great foundation. And I know that that's going to extend into all of the CTE programs at the high school. So very, very happy to have you here.
Terrific. Go to Mrs. Carpenter, then to Mr. Olympia.
Thank you. Ms. Spinoza, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you have your hands full because these programs are up and coming. This is the way to go nowadays. It isn't, all about the college path. It's about the vocational path, and I wish you the best of luck, and if you ever need anything, please let us know. I'm very passionate about all of these programs. I'm a product of a vocational school, and I can't be any more pleased that we have it here in Peabody, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Mr. Olympio?
Thank you. Just congratulations. I hear wonderful things about the work that you've done, and it's just an invaluable position, invaluable resource, and it's just a tremendous option that our students have in the district, and I really appreciate all of your hard work and energy that will end up being in this position. Thank you so much.
Turn it over to you, Mrs. Spinoza.
I would like to thank all of you for this opportunity and the community for this opportunity to be your next CTE director at Peabody High School. I know filling Maria's shoes are going to be very difficult, but I hope that I can live up to her legacy. And I'm very happy about the administrative staff that I'm working with because they've already shown all their support, and I feel very blessed for that. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you and best of luck. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Vidal. Okay. Yeah, that was a tough act to follow. You did well, though. Yep.
Through the chair to Dr. Vidala, what role does Ms. Ferry have moving forward?
So she'll serve as a mentor, and they'll be working very closely through Ms. Ferry's retirement. She'll take a little time off, and then she said she can't stay away. So she'll provide a little bit of consulting for us and some mentorship to Ms. Spinoza. So we're very excited that Maria will be staying on.
So will it just be for the next school year that Maria will be staying on, or do we have a timeline?
She hasn't given me a commitment in her retirement, but
Okay.
she typically can't stay away. So.
She's been retired quite a few times.
Yes, yes.
She's very
We'll take
valuable.
as
Yep.
much as she's willing to give.
We love her.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
do. And the next item, Mr. Mayor, we have a new school business manager. And so Joe Scanlon is retiring in the next month. I can't believe it's happening that quickly. So I'd like to introduce Larry Fleming. Larry's a licensed school business administrator, and he holds the MCPPO certification, which will be very important for us moving forward. Larry began his career as an accountant in 2006 while working for National Fish and Seafood. He quickly worked his way up the ranks, holding several managerial positions, including plant accounting manager. After more than 10 years in the field, Larry decided to pursue a career as a school business manager. He began working for Manchester Essex Regional District, and he currently is the district accountant for the Hamilton Wenham Public Schools. Larry comes highly recommended from his previous districts, and he was the unanimous choice of our interview committee. So please join me in welcoming Larry Fleming as our next school business manager.
Well, thank you, Dr. Vidal, and welcome, Mr. Fleming. I heard just some tremendous things from the interview committee, the panel, about what you presented and your background. So looking forward to working with you. I think we all are. We got a lot of work ahead of us, and it's just great to have you. So congratulations, and we appreciate you joining us, our team. Anybody have any questions or anything for Mr. Fleming? Great. We want to give you the opportunity if there's anything you wanted to say.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for the opportunity. I'm excited to roll up my sleeves and kind of dive into everything. Peabody's a dynamic, diverse, city, and like I said, I'm just really excited.
So we do need a vote,
So
correct?
with this, we would need a vote to direct the superintendent to enter into contract negotiations with Mr. Fleming, and if everything goes well, he has agreed to start on May 1st. So we would need a motion to direct the superintendent to,
So
I guess
moved.
it's to negotiate contracts.
So moved.
Thank you. You've heard the motion for approval by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Congratulations, welcome.
Congratulations, and thank you all.
Okay, so I'd like to go back to our agenda, back to item 3. We have a couple of important items on agenda item number 4, continued business. First one, Mrs. Dunn, any update on the Welch School MSBA project for us today?
One update, we will be holding our Welch School Building Committee meeting on Thursday, March 31st at 9:30 in the morning. And again, that's a public meeting, everyone's invited to attend, and that's when we will hear more updates on the actual design and the phasing process we're going through right now. And we have had some very good news with MSBA. We're moving right along as far as where we are on the MSBA calendar, and on our own, we're right where we're supposed to be. So that's actually very good. And talk has started about specifics on the very first day of construction. Plus, we have to plan an event for the beginning of the project, so that's going to be a lot of fun too.
I love those events, so
Yeah,
yes, we have to
this
work.
is gonna be good.
We have to work on that. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Any questions for Mrs. Dunn? Okay. Let's go to item number 2, a very important one, the MSBA Statement of Interests. We have some deadlines coming up and some decisions to make. We did have a discussion at an earlier meeting regarding, unfortunately, the MSBA decision not to invite us into the core program for the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School and the Center School. There's a quick turnaround in terms of reapplying for the core program, which is for large renovations and for a potential new school. But there's also the accelerated repair program, and we have a very tight deadline for that, for roofs, windows, boilers, things of that nature. So, Mrs. Dunn, do you want to, who should we open that up? Mrs. Dunn, do you want to open up the statement of interest, please? Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we need to do tonight is to take the vote to direct the superintendent to submit statements of interest on 3 projects. The first one is actually the South School roof. This would be under the accelerated repair program through MSBA. And we're hopeful that we'll be chosen to enter into that program because the South School needs an entire new roof for the entire building. So what you have in our agenda packet is actually the language that does have to be read into the record in order for us to take the proper vote. And there is one blank on this one. If you look down, statement of interest form dated, and that would be, we will date this one on March 24th. And as soon as this is approved, I'm anticipating a unanimous vote of approval here, it's going to be submitted to the city council for their vote as well. And then it will be the 2 votes and the statement of interest will be submitted to the MSBA by March 25th because the accelerated repair program is on a different time frame. So if someone would like to make that motion, it's right in front of you. And let me ask, Mr. Swanson, when did your kids go to school? Wow, oh, okay. Oh, that's right. I was trying to, we just try to let people who had a tie to the school. Well, why don't we let, you know, go ahead. There you go. You just have to, here, I'll give you my copy. Just read the entire, yeah. From Resolved.
From Resolved.
Yes.
And it blank is March 24th.
Yes. We're gonna break you in easily, right?
Thank you. Sorry, new guy syndrome.
Really, I put you on the spot, sorry.
Not a problem. All right, I'd like to make a motion, having convened in an open meeting on March 8th, 2022, prior to the closing date, the school committee of the city of Peabody, in accordance with the charter, by laws and ordinance, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the Statement of Interest, SOI, form dated March 24th, 2022, for the South Elementary School located at 16 Maple Street Extension, Peabody, Massachusetts, which describes, explains the following deficiencies and prior prior categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The MSBA the MSBA priority selected is the Accelerated Repair Program for the repair and/or replacement of roofs. The specific objective of this statement of interest is to partner with the MSBA for the replacement of the failing roof on the entire facility of the South Elementary School, as articulated in the South Elementary School SOI. And the school committee hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any funding commitment for the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, regional school districts to file an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. That's so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dunn. Excellent. Any comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the two statements of interest for the center and the high school, as these will be going into submission for the core program, and the deadline for that is April. So before you, you have a motion for the center school, and on this one, it can be dated April, and the month is sufficient on that one, okay? So if someone would like to make that motion, and traditionally we'll go for a center school parent, Mr. Amico. You just write April, just say April, yeah, we can
Thank
just do the month.
All right. I'd like to make a motion by the school committee, move to submit the following statement of interest to the MSBA regarding the center school. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on March 8th, 2022, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the school committee of the city of Peabody, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated in April 2022 for the center school located at 18 Irving Street, Peabody, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The MSBA priority selected is priority number 7, replacement and renovation of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. The specific objective of this SOI is to partner with the MSBA in a feasibility study for the replacement of the center school. The educational deficits of the center school are articulated in the center school SOI and include the need for gym space, cafeteria space, food service, servery, and kitchen space, much-needed upgrades to classrooms, meeting rooms, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems. And the school committee hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commitments the city to file an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. Respectfully submitted, March 8th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Amico. So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hockman. Any comments or questions before roll call? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes. Thank you. Now, the third motion. This is regarding Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, and I have passed out a new copy. Did you receive the copy just now? Oh, could you pass those along? This is to replace the draft in our packet. On this Peabody qualifies under 2 priority categories. So this is a little bit different than usual. And the reason for that is because we want to make the strongest application possible. We're going to utilize a lot of new updates in our SOI, make it very, very current, and that's why this motion is written the way it is, and hopefully this will help us to get into that pipeline with the MSBA. As you know, we apply every year, and we really desperately need a high school, a new high school. So I would like to make a motion. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on March 8th, 2022, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the school committee of the City of Peabody, in accordance with the charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated April 2022 for the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School located at 485 Lowell Street, Peabody, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. The MSBA priority categories selected are MSBA priority number 3, prevention of loss of accreditation. The NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges, Commission on Public Schools, voted to place PVMHS on warning status for the standards of instruction and community resources for learning. The NEASC accreditation report of March 2020 cited the lack of facilities sufficient to fully implement the curriculum, including co-curricular programs and other learning opportunities, programs, and service. Inadequate HVAC and electrical systems, insufficient bathrooms, broken or non-functioning lighting in classrooms, hallways, and parking lots, unsafe water quality, limited handicap access, inadequate security, including insufficient passage locking systems, leaking roof, and out-of-date classrooms, studios, and labs. MSBA priority number 7, replacement and renovation of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. The educational deficits of the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School are articulated in the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School SOI and include the need for much-needed upgrades to classrooms, science areas, career vocational technical education classrooms, meeting rooms, counseling offices, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems, energy efficiencies, building envelope, disability accessibility, and security considerations. And the school committee hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the City of Peabody to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. You've heard the motion made by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Olympio. Comments, questions on the motion? Thank you, Mrs. Dunn, for that additional information. I know, I think it was spelled out well in terms of what was mentioned in the NEASC report, and I think it just further supports the real need we have for a new or a significant improvement to our high school. So I think that language is very welcome, so thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. And we'll now go back to the superintendent's report. We have a few
Mr.
remaining
Mayor?
items. Oh, sorry.
I don't think we have to take a vote, but can you submit these for us to the city council?
Yes, I will work with Dr. Vidal and submit those to the council.
Thank you.
I know, they know these items are coming.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, terrific, thank you. So now I will go back to superintendent's report, few remaining items. Dr. Vidal, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 quick items left on the superintendent's report. Early childhood programming, an ELA curriculum update, and some new and exciting information about paid high school internships. So the first item here that we're going to discuss is early childhood improvements. So through our new early childhood director, we've made a number of improvements. The first being communication with our kindergarten teachers regarding readiness. So really trying to streamline the curriculum that we're offering in pre-K and make sure our kids are ready for kindergarten. So having that connection between pre-K and kindergarten has been very helpful. One recommendation that has come out of Ms. Charest's work this year has been improvements in furniture and supplies, and so we'll be looking to make these improvements prior to the end of the school year. So updating the classroom furniture in all of our pre-K rooms, updating the supplies across the pre-K rooms as well, including kitchen and dining sets, art centers, Lego tables, dress-up stations, and sensory tables. This list was identified through the Welch School Building Project. So the new items that Danisco Design through our FF&E process has identified that these are the cutting-edge things, these are the high-quality items they put in new schools that we'll be putting into the program over at the Welch. So we've decided that we're going to also put those at the McCarthy to make sure all of our pre-K kids have the same items. So big thank you to Danisco Design for working with us to identify these areas. And then, so this came out of one of the things that the pre-K teachers were looking for was to do more play-based learning for our 3- and 4-year-olds. And so on March 16th, we'll be beginning, the teachers will go through these items and make sure that they're, the right fit for their classroom. They'll have some say in what they pick out, and then they'll begin some work on play-based learning, professional development. We'll also engage in some of that as well for all staff at the beginning of the school year. Just to sort of recap our early childhood programming, right now we offer 6 integrated classrooms, which are half-day, AM and PM, so 15 students in the morning, 15 students in the afternoon. We have one Title I pre-K program is at the Welch, and again, those students also do a half-day, either AM or PM. We have 2 substantially separate classrooms that are full-day for students that qualify through an IEP. And right now, this year, the tuition is $2,875 for the half-day students, and that is all that we offer. So some of the challenges that they've identified is filling some of the Title I and the tuition spots with our current half-day model. That has been a challenge for us. Previously, before COVID, we did offer a full-day program, and we've heard that there is a strong desire for full-day. So a recommendation that's come from our early childhood staff is to propose 4 integrated classrooms next year that would have the same model of the AM and PM. So we'd like to continue to offer that. They'd like to offer 2 full-day classrooms, similar to what was happening in 2019 and 2020 before the closure. We went to an all half-day program last year. That's what our kindergarten was offered. So we continued it this year with our new early childhood director, had her look at all of the programming that we offered, and this has been identified as a real need. So they're looking to explore a potential integrated option for families who have students who have an IEP at the Welch instead of having to go all the way to the McCarthy. And then they would like to continue to have 2 substantially separate programs. So with that, we would like to, as we post for pre-K registration, we'd like to offer the same tuition that we have this year, $28.75 for the half-day students, which is 2.5 hours daily. But we'd also like to offer a full-day option, and we looked back, and in 2019, the tuition was $5,500. We'd like to go back to that and then reassess next year, but we would like to bring that to the committee for a vote if you approve to offer full-day pre-K for $5,500. That would be 6 hours. They would come in for 6 hours. They'd have 5 hours of instruction, 2.5 in the morning, and then they have lunch and recess, and then 2.5 in the afternoon. So basically what we're asking to do is go back to the pre-pandemic offerings that we had, which I think there was a strong desire. So registration is open. We haven't opened up a full-day option yet, but we would like to do so if the committee would support going back to what we had prior to that.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. Open it up for questions or comments. Mrs. Dunn?
I'll make a motion that we go back to our pre-pandemic programs, which included full day, and that we go back to the 2019 tuition rates. So move.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mrs. Carpenter. On that motion, Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you, through the chair to Dr. Vidala. Did you say that you were going to offer one of the special education programs over at the Welch for the preschool?
So this year, we were not able to fill all the seats in the Title I pre-K. For whatever reason, we couldn't fill it. There is a desire for students who live on that side of town that go to the McCarthy to attend a school on their side of town. So we would like to explore, and this is not, it's not set in stone yet. We'd like to explore if there are open seats, offer those to integrated students, and then offer up the scholarship seats through Title I to students at the McCarthy if they couldn't afford it. So we would be interested in looking at that. I wanted to bring it to the committee because it is in the infancy stages of looking at if we weren't able to fill all those slots. Like right now, there's only 17 kids between the AM and the PM, so there's 13 slots open. And then we have kids that we bus across town for pre-K to go to the McCarthy. So if they were low incident IEP students that could have their needs met in an integrated classroom closer to their home, we'd like to explore that and then offer those free seats over to kids at the McCarthy. Rather than have empty seats at the McCarthy.
Yeah, no,
right
it
now.
makes sense. I was just checking, like, we have the staffing to do that, like the
Yes,
appropriate staff to.
It would be with the current staffing, right? Right now, there's just open seats over at the Welch, and we have people who would like to go there, but we're telling them that to get their
Yeah.
services met, they have to go to the McCarthy.
Yep.
So we'd like to explore what that would look like, probably an additional para, just to make sure that they have the support that they need.
Right. And just point of information, any child on the IEP does not pay any of the tuition.
Correct, right.
That tuition rate is for role model students
Role model
only.
peers,
Yep.
correct. Yep, thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm, through you to Dr. Vidal, I'm just trying to understand the programming more than the rates. We're looking to change 6 half-day classrooms for preschool to 4 half-day classrooms, add 2 full-day classrooms, keep the 2 substantially separate full-day classrooms, and keep the 1 Title I classroom, right?
Correct. So it would be the same number of staff. It's just that 2 of the classrooms, instead of having an AM and a PM, would offer a full-day program. So 2 teachers would offer a full-day program out of the 6 that are currently offering half-day.
Okay, and I also was a little confused about, at the Welch, we have the Title I program?
We have a Title I program that has 30 seats, 15 in the morning and 15 in the afternoon. And this year, we were unable to fill all those seats. So we're continuing to try to fill those. We would like to offer them first to all Title I students for a free pre-K. If we did not fill those seats, we'd like to fill those with integrated seats on that side of town, which would then free up some free seats over at the McCarthy for kids that might benefit from a scholarship.
Okay, and the two full-day classrooms, not the 2 full-day classrooms, the 4 integrated half-day classrooms, and the 2 substantially separate classrooms, are those all at the McCarthy, and are they?
Yes,
gonna
there are
be
8
staying
classrooms at the McCarthy and 1 classroom at the Welch.
there? Okay. And these programs that you're talking about with the tuition that we'll vote on tonight does not include PASOS?
Correct. This is our
PASOS
integrated preschool that's run out of the McCarthy, and we've included the one, in this presentation, we've included the one at the Welch. Pasos is running at the south and at the west
Okay.
Memorial School.
And the PASOS programs has their own separate administrative
Correct.
staff? The position that we created last budget doesn't oversee the PASOS?
No, they collaborate together, though, on curriculum, and they offer support, but they do run separately, different tuitions, different staff.
Okay. And again, just to, we added this position in the last budget after going, I think, 1.5 years without having the position, and I'm happy to increase the full-day classrooms and take on the DINISCO design recommendations for the dining room sets and the kitchens and the art centers and Legos and things like that. I think that would be a big improvement to the students and to the staff and so forth. I would like to, and I talked to you about this a little bit when we met, understand from a budgetary perspective the benefit of the position. I'm not sure that I understand it with this, but I appreciate what we're going to vote on tonight in terms of setting the tuition rates and the change from 4 half-days, 6 half-days to 4 and 1, and then adding 2 full days. I think that's valuable as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Any further questions? Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Just for point of clarification or understanding, that we did have that position previously. Kristen Hutton-Fay was the director of the McCarthy, and she had a leave, some type of leave in between. So we were without a director of the special education, the McCarthy preschool. And at that time, it was the McCarthy principal that was overseeing, doing double duty for the preschool program. So it was my understanding that that was a replacement of that position in addition to the kindergarten coordinator as well. Is that correct?
Yes, we combine those two positions, put a little bit more on this position, so they're providing oversight, but that continuity between pre-K and K has been very helpful. So it was kind of we lost the kindergarten coordinator in a budget reduction, and Ms. Hutton-Fay did retire. So we had those two positions, we combined them to create this new position.
Yeah, so it's not really new. It's a position that we replaced and kind of put into one, two
Correct.
positions into one. That's my understanding.
Yes.
That's correct?
That is.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I
Mr.
think I
Hockman.
said we were without those positions for a year and a half, and we functioned fine, I think. And we're really not making substantial changes to the program with the position. So I'm just trying to understand what the $105,000, what value we're getting for it. And I think that we're going to explore budgetary items through lines as we go through this process. So that was really the basis of the question.
And through the
Briefly.
chair to Mr. Hockman, I understood that part. And I will say during frequent meetings and the process of hiring the preschool director, the McCarthy principal did express that it was a burden that she was no longer interested in having, and I don't think there's any other principals that oversee a integrated preschool, and it's a huge undertaking, and I appreciate the fact that we replaced and filled that position. So, thank you.
Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chase for the next item, which is an update on our ELA curriculum adoption.
Thank you. Put my reading glasses on. So, a meeting several months ago, we were at the beginning of an exciting adventure in looking at high-quality instructional materials. Our Journeys program at the K through 5 level has become outdated over the years to the point where new materials have been published and our Journeys is in effect out of date. So we jumped on the opportunity to work with the Department of Ed in a year-long process of learning how to closely examine high-quality instructional materials with the hopes that at the end of that year, we would be able to make a recommendation about which materials we would like to bring on for this next iteration of our K through 5 ELA. So we brought together a team of 25 educators that included both teachers and administrators from across the district. We really put them through the paces with training and how to look at high-quality instructional materials and vet different materials without being swayed by a sales pitch, and really look closely at a rubric to be able to make sure that what we're looking at is really what our kids and our teachers need. From that work, from that group of 25 coming together, we narrowed down our vendors to 2 selections. And so we're now at the point where we need to field test. So back in the old days, you would pilot something, and the problem with piloting is you'd have one set of materials to pilot, you'd fall in love with it, and you would forget about all the others that existed out there. With a field test, you take a long time to narrow down the selections to 2 finalists, and then you end up field testing both of them. So we're at that point, and we looked for volunteers from across the district. We wanted every school represented. We wanted every grade level represented, and we wanted to make sure that we had some special educators in there, along with opportunities for reading specialists and ELL teachers to really dig in and be able to look at the materials so that when we do make a recommendation, it really is an informed choice with lots of input from every stakeholder possible. We will offer training in 2 potential programs to this group of 17 volunteers. They went through the first set of training, and now what will come up is a 2-week field test of those materials. And then there'll be a break in between where they get more training from a second vendor, and then they pilot for 2 weeks those additional materials. It's really important to note that the curriculum doesn't change, just the tools that you're using to deliver that curriculum changes, so that you can really see the difference between what you have at the moment and what you could potentially recommend going forward. In an effort to make sure that every teacher has a voice, on March 16th, our Early Release Professional Development Day, we've worked with the vendors to allow, for lack of a better phrase, a scavenger hunt that gives every teacher K through 5 that would work with these materials the opportunity to dig in, to look at the online materials that are available to them, and to actually see the physical books and supplementary materials that come along with each program. And so they'll get to test that out and then offer their feedback in that way. We want to also point out that the 17 teachers who are field testing, we did not leave anyone out. So anyone who said they were interested, we were able to find a space for them, and it shook out in such a way that we were able to get the representation we were looking for. In terms of getting additional feedback, it's important not just to get feedback from teachers and administrators, but also from students and their families who need to work with this as an at-home basis. And so we're developing some quick and easy surveys. In the kids survey, for example, you get your variation of smiley faces or sad faces for how they're interacting with the materials. And then for parents, we have a draft of a letter that will be ready to go out so that they're aware that in these 17 classrooms, they'll be using some high-quality materials, and we'll be asking them for their input as they help kids go through homework or interact with their kids and ask questions about how ELA went for the day. In addition, we also are very excited to announce that we received a $200,000 grant to help us in this work. So a chunk of this grant will be set aside to actually help purchase those materials, but then another significant portion has been set aside so that when we have training that may occur outside of school hours, we can train people so that they can get a head start in feeling comfortable with the materials. In addition, if we have to pull together focus groups after school or outside of those contractual hours, we wanted to make sure that we could offer payment for that as well. So that's a really significant development that's exciting for us. And that's there's a whole lot that's happened, and we have kept a list of every action that we've taken along the way and who's been involved in the feedback that we've received. So this is just a snapshot of what's happening. Get one slide to capture it all, and that gives the gist of it. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Any questions on this item? Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you, through the chair to Dr. Chase. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. I had a question about the grant, the $200,000 to purchase materials. Is that like for 1 year, and is that for like consumables where we'd have to replace them each following year? How will that work after that grant's gone, and how long is it?
So this is a grant that has to be spent by June 30th. So it's the initial phase. So it helps in purchasing the materials, and then it also helps in getting teachers ready to use them. So it's not welcome to the first day of school, here's your set of books and get going on that. So in terms of planning for the future, that's where you start to work with vendors to see how far in advance do you want to pay for things up front, and are there other grants such as ESEE that can help with that spending.
And that was June 30th, this June 30th. Okay.
And if I could just add on.
Yeah.
So there will be a set of textbooks that we'll be able to purchase with this. There's also an online version, which is the annual fee. So I think, there's that combination. This will pay primarily for the hardcover textbooks that they'll get, and then the ESSER, we can work on a multi-year license, so we can get a discount for multi-year. That's what we'd be looking to use ESSER for. But this would help at least get the books in the hands of the teachers, and then things like consumables and whatnot, we would have to typically budget for, but you can also buy a multi-year plan with them. So that's probably what we'd be looking in the appropriated budget or to put into ESSER, what we'd be looking to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Mr. Amico?
Thank you through the chair. Dr. Chase, thank you so much. This doesn't surprise me one bit, all that you've done. In fact, I remember reaching out to Dr. Vidala, and what was the number that we came up with for grant? So Dr. Chase came in and as an English teacher, as an English director, humanities director, this is what she does. And I believe she's probably at close to $600,000 in grant money. And I just want to thank you so much, because you know what teachers need, and you're bringing it to them, and you're actually making them a part of the decision-making process, which is so valuable. As an educator, as a teacher, that's what you want. You want people to bring you in, but also value your opinion. So thank you so much for that. And I do think we should have an education subcommittee meeting, because you have a lot. You've kind of taken over the academic curriculum end of it, and because that's what you do. But I would love to have you in a session where we can have some questions publicly, and maybe you can show all that you've done so far. So just thank you so much.
I can't wait. We've got a lot of teachers that are working really hard on it, some exciting projects, so.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amico. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dr. Chase. Thank you again. Like Mr. Amico said it very, very eloquently. I can't say it any better. I just want to go over this slide with you. There's a lot of information up there.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
It's too crowded.
No, it's delightful to see. I'm going to talk about 2 points that are up there. One is the grant that you were able to secure for the district, with others, I'm sure, helping you.
Yes.
Pays for the materials as well as the professional development, at least for the first year. Is that right?
So it pays for a portion. We don't have the quotes just yet. That's the next phase. So you get a ballpark figure from DESE. That's part of this process. And then you look to see what materials you're purchasing from a menu of materials.
Well, that's fantastic, because this is really a dramatic change from how we purchase textbooks in this district historically, which are through capital funds. So, if we're able to do this by way of grant as opposed to a capital budget, that's a win-win-win, and maybe a few more wins somewhere else. So thank you for that. And the second thing that I think I heard you say, but I'm not sure that it's up there, is what we're seeking to do through this, these new materials, is to change the delivery of the same curriculum. The curriculum isn't changing. It's the delivery or the tools that teachers will be able to utilize for the delivery of that curriculum.
Yes, so if you think about the standards that we're responsible for, the standards aren't going to change. If you were going to teach standard, 22, you'll still teach standard 22. The difference is the story might look different, or the manipulatives that kids are using, or the writing assignment that goes along with it. One of the issues with the program that we have is that we need a stronger writing component that's integrated and doesn't stand alone. And so we're looking for products that have that writing integrated, and so teachers would get to experiment with that.
That's a great segue into my last point, which was this is really a content-based change. We're not looking to, we had a gentleman who was here before us a few months ago who was talking about some other changes in delivery or curriculum around the country. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the content in terms of being able to deliver the material for a better way of absorption and mastery by students.
So I like to use the example of a cell phone. So your cell phone from 15 years ago worked just fine for what you needed it for 15 years ago, and the cell phone you have right now in 2022 is really a computer in your hand. Likewise, the materials that you had 10 years ago or plus 10 years when you first bought those materials have now been replaced by more updated, more hands-on, more technology-based type of materials. So it's really the tools that you're using.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Okay, thank you, Dr. Chase.
And the final item, I'm also going to turn this back over to Dr. Chase, who's done some work with this, but we're very excited through a program with DESE that we are able to pay our high school students for internships. We currently have 22 students who are doing internships in our district. They will be eligible to receive pay for that, but we're also able to expand that. I know Dr. Lord has done a great job identifying places in the community to place kids, but now we're going to be able to fund that. So before it would be unpaid, but through this program with DESE. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Chase, and she can fill you in on the rest of this slide.
All righty, so earlier in the year, we were presented with an opportunity to apply and commit a letter of interest for a partnership that DESE offered with HISIP related to internships that would be offered to high school seniors. We received information shortly thereafter that we were eligible for this grant funding, and this is an opportunity to provide funds for high school seniors to be paid to serve as interns who can help in our district's classrooms. This has been really well received by principals at all levels. The older kids being in the schools with younger kids is really an idea that gives them an opportunity to go back to their roots and be a role model for kids and be that extra set of hands to help teachers. We were offered $10,000 to start with the possibility to expand those opportunities. Principal Magno has been working on this behind the scenes and is currently in conversation with the representative to work out the details. Right now, we have 22 students who are currently working as unpaid interns in the early childhood sector within the district, and they will have the opportunity to participate if they are interested. So that's it in a nutshell. There are questions on that one.
Thank you. Questions, Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Dr. Chase, so high school seniors will help out in classrooms, so they'll go to like the elementary schools?
Yes.
Okay. What's the guide, how does that work? Is it certain grades that they're gonna go into? How are they gonna get there? Is it part of the school day?
So they go into the younger grades. This was offered by DESE, I believe in, my years are mixed up, 2020, I think, when the pandemic first shut down our schools and when they tried to open back up. They needed extra hands to work with teachers because the teachers were out sick, and they would help in the classrooms as well. So this was DESE's way of trying to address some staffing issues, at the same time combining that with opportunities for kids to get some work experience and be able to serve as role models. So they go into the classrooms, they can help with small group work, they can help, even if it's something as simple as working in the cafeteria beside teachers, to open the ketchup packets that are difficult for the little hands. They do have to be supervised by an adult, so they're side by side with a teacher, and they have to fulfill their requirements at the high school so that they can go and do that work.
Well, I think this is amazing. It's a great opportunity, especially for all of those high school seniors that want to go into education. You know, this is part of the thing that they have to do anyway. So this is great, and I just hope you'll give us updates about how it's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Mr. Swanson?
Thank you. Dr. Chase, awesome presentation, both of them. Quick question on this internship. Is this ad hoc, so a school or a teacher says, I need a resource, and the students can go in, or is it something that's scheduled with the students?
So that's something we're working on right now. So Principal Magno's working behind the scenes to see what scheduling might look like. There's has to be an interest from the student and see how many hours they're able to commit to it, and then doing that matching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Mrs. Dunn?
I think this is wonderful. I was just at a seminar where they were talking about the worries in the future of a teacher shortage. They're looking at a huge gap in teacher and in the programs that are available. And they want to have, create some pipeline programs for teaching. This is honestly what they were speaking about, and I think this is great. I'm really, really glad that we're participating in that.
It actually,
Oh, go ahead.
it actually gives us access to something called Ed Rising, And that's a whole host of resources to create that pipeline, to get kids interested in that field of work.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. All right, excellent, thank you very much.
So yeah, we're very, very excited about this program, and it's nice for high school seniors. Many of them are going back to their old elementary schools that they attended and spending some time with their teachers. So it really does bring it full circle. They're ending their education career, and they're having an opportunity to go back to where it began. So it is a nice little piece like that, and the fact that we can pay them to do so is excellent. So that was it. So with that, that concludes the superintendent's report, Mr. Mayor.
Terrific, thank you very much. Now we'll go to public participation. Is there anyone here today that would like to speak? Come on up, Karen. Mrs. Mayo. Welcome, and if you could just please introduce yourself.
My name's Karen Mayo. My address is 61 Harrison Ave, Peabody, Mass. The only reason I got up to spoke is I saw that when I came in, you were giving your budget presentation. One of the things I'd like to have this committee think about, bus fees. I'm sorry, but that was done with a sunset clause, I don't know how many years ago, by Dave McGeaney. And he had at one time said, hopefully we would get rid of it again. And that has to be over 15 years. I have seen kids this winter walking home from school. Some of the days aren't bad, some are. I heard of a child that's crossing Route 1 to come to school. I'm up at the high school. I don't care, I don't think any street's safe, especially not a highway to cross. One of the things I think should be checked and looked at is the bus fees. Our job is to get kids to school. They can't be taught if they're not there, or if they get hurt or sick walking in the weather, in the cold. Now, I know when my kids went, there was not a bus fee. They were actually picked up. I think at that time, kindergarten was a half mile. Actually, no, they picked up all kindergarten students. And I think the high school was 2, I'm not positive. But if I remember correctly, the elementary, and I think even the middle school, was only maybe 1 mile. You would also cut down on the amount of traffic at all these schools to some degree. And it might be easier on the parents. So I think that needs to be something to be checked again. I have not heard it discussed, and I understand, with budgets. But our first priority, I think, is to get the kids there and get them home safely. So I'm hoping that during your budgets, that will come up as a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayo. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody that would like to speak online? Okay. Okay, next we'll go to written communication. We do have one written communication, and she is absolutely correct. It's a communication from Amy LePage regarding the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School exterior lighting, and her letter is directly on point. That has been a problem, and we have to fix it, quite frankly. She very well lays out the concern, the dangerous condition, just the lack of lighting outside the Peabody High School, and we haven't fixed this yet, and we need to. So I would like to take this issue on my own, work with Dr. Vidala. I got to get this done. So this letter, well-timed and well-written, and let me work on that and give a report of progress very shortly.
Okay. A motion to receive.
Yep. Motion received by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. All in favor? Thank you,
And-
Amy, for writing in.
And Mr.
Mr.
Mayor,
Chairman?
I have a late communication as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. About the lighting, could you get back to us about the report, I would count this as one report, but about the reported lights that are down and not working at the high school? I know I've reported them. I know Mrs. Carpenter has reported them. I know people who've contacted me have reported them. And there's There doesn't seem to be any action taken, so if you could get back to us soon to let us know what status on all of those reports, that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we haven't, we need to take care of this. We
Yeah.
got to push a little bit more, so give me a little bit of time and I can get a status report on those items. I know exactly what you guys are talking about, so.
Thank you.
Let me get back to you on that. Okay, subcommittee, I'm sorry, you had a.
We have a late communication from City Clerk Allison Danforth regarding the City Council voted to appropriate money for the West School Accelerated Repair Roof Project. So I just wanted to submit that. I know it was emailed to the committee, but if we could also do a motion to receive this communication from the City Council.
Motion received.
Thank you for the motion to receive that item, seconded by Mr. Olympio. All in favor? Okay, excellent. Subcommittee reports. Let's go to those. Education Subcommittee, Mr. Miko?
Thank you through the chair. I'll contact Dr. Vidal and Dr. Chase about setting up a subcommittee and having Dr. Chase report back on a little bit more on what she's done and all the great things that are going on down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Olympio?
Mr. Mayor.
Nothing.
Oh,
to-
I'm sorry. On that item, Education Subcommittee, Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Miko and I did have a brief conversation, it was very brief, before the meeting tonight. I'd like to report something to the Education Subcommittee for discussion and hopefully reporting out. At our last school committee meeting, we talked about a whole bunch of things, including Holocaust and genocide studies, and the new legislation that is passed here in Massachusetts, making Holocaust and genocide studies a mandatory part of the curriculum for middle school and high school students. As we're all aware, there is a elective at the Peabody Veterans Memorial High School for Holocaust and genocide studies, where there's some in-depth learning about some atrocities that have taken place in the history of man, unfortunately. And there is also some very, very brief touching of that subject matter in the world history curriculum up at the high school. We, I think, are, and I don't know when the effective date of the legislation is, but we are under a charge to add middle school curriculum for Holocaust and genocide studies. And I talked about this last meeting. It's clear to me, not necessarily here in Peabody, because we remarkably, I was checking on some statistics in preparation for tonight. It's remarkable to me that there's a statistic that says that there are no reports of anti-Semitic activities in the Peabody public school system for the this current school year. I know that to be false, but it's being reported that way. Now, I'm not suggesting that the activities that are taking place here rise to the level of some of the other communities here in the Commonwealth, but it's clear that it's an issue as identified by the legislature and their action to pass this, I think, historic piece of legislation. So with that, I've reached out to a few rabbis here in Peabody who asked me to call Debbie Colton, who is the director of the Lappin Foundation, who has already developed a curriculum. It's a 6-week curriculum, really focused more on Holocaust studies and anti-Semitism. And I'm not suggesting, nor do I want, what I'm going to ask for after we go through subcommittee, a course on the Holocaust. I'm not looking for that. I don't think it's, that's, our students need to have a much, much broader scope to understand a lot of horrific events that have occurred historically throughout the world to a variety of different people generally all for the same reason, a lot of hate, a lot of misunderstanding and ignorance, and a bunch of other reasons. So with that, and what I will ask for eventually is a course at the middle school and at the high school that's mandatory for at least half a semester, which I believe is right around 6 weeks, and not less than that. But we'll get to that through Mr. Miko's subcommittee. What I'd like to do is ask Superintendent Vidala or his designee, I don't know who you would charge this with, Doc, to contact Ms. Colton, perhaps have some sort of get-together with Principals Magno and Principal Busey to start that conversation with an eye towards a subcommittee meeting chaired by Mr. Amico on this subject, and with hopefully an invitation for Ms. Colton to appear before us as a school committee at our next meeting in March. And, sorry, I'm an attorney too, and I want to publicly talk about the courage and foresight of our mayor, our own mayor, Ted Betancourt, who is the honorary chair of the team, the Lapin Foundation Teen Anti-Semitism Task Force for mayors and town officials throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is going to be taking place online virtually on March 28th, 2022 from 1 to 2 p.m. And that means that Mayor Betancourt is leading 350 other city mayors or town administrators or city managers in having the discussion, leading the discussion on having people stop hating each other and understand that we need to function as caring, loving people who help each other and assist each other to get through difficult days, for some of us more difficult days than others. But I just wanted to, I learned about this earlier this week of Mr. Betancourt's function in this task force, and I couldn't be more proud of my mayor, of our mayor, and I just wanted to publicly thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. I really appreciate you saying that. It was a great honor when I was approached a couple months back by Debbie Colton, the Lapin Foundation, and this summit that we're having on March 28th is very much needed. Certainly, I think all of us have seen there's been really a rise in a number of very disturbing, troubling, disheartening, you could attach any word you want to it, of incidents that have taken place very near Peabody, very much, and it's something that I think we need to continue to speak about and stand up to. So, yeah, we're having it on March 28th, and I'll be getting out information to local officials very shortly. I've been focusing on trying to get mayors and town managers and town administrators across the country, across the state involved, and to be present at that virtual summit. Governor Baker will be speaking, representative or a family member from the Kraft Philanthropies Foundation, from the Kraft family that we all know. And a number of other important speakers will be speaking at that moment. And I think there will be other events or other summits in the future. But I was very touched to be honored with that, that request to serve in that capacity. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was an anti-Semitic incident that really hit me, hit all of us, that took place about 3 years ago before the pandemic to one of our rabbis in our community. And we immediately, and it was a city effort, it wasn't me, it was a city effort that we had a rally at City Hall, spoke very openly about how upset we were as a community, and we voiced our concerns and what we wanted from our city. And I think because of that, I've grew a relationship with some people, and I'm very honored to be a part of that. So thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Hockman. And it'll be publicized a little bit coming up here in the near future. So thank you for that. And that'll be discussed in the Education Subcommittee. Okay. Okay, thank you. Finance, Mr. Olympio.
Nothing new to report.
School safety, Mr. Olympio. Athletics and wellness.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Quality and standards, Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few policies that I'd like to request that they be referred to the Quality and Standards Subcommittee for discussion and action, to bring them back before this committee. One is to create a personal electronic device policy. We had done some research on that several years ago. We have in the past had this created. Technology's changed. We need to update that. And so I would like to request that that topic of personal electronic device policy be referred to the Quality and Standards Subcommittee. And then in our packet, we also have 3 proposed policies sent to us by MASC. One is the non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. The next one is, let me just see, another one, non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. They are file AC and then file ACR. And then the third one is harassment of students, which is filed JICK. 2 of these policies would be updating current policies, and then the final one would be a new policy that we don't have in our manual, but we should discuss it and decide if we want to include it. So I'd like to make a motion that those 4 policies be referred to Quality and Standards for action. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Amico. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, that's a unanimous vote. All set?
Okay,
All set?
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll schedule a meeting. Goes without saying.
Parent and student advisory boards, Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you. Actually, Mr. Chairman, I have scheduled a meeting with the Student Advisory Board representatives. I'm just going to attend one of their after-school meetings and personally invite them to a presentation by MASC for student representatives. Hopefully, we're going to be able to have it in this area. We did have, MASC did have a training for student reps, but it was in Marlborough. It was in about 3 weeks ago, and it was in the middle of a snowstorm. It had to be changed and moved, and looking for better weather, a better commute, and hopefully it will work out for our students to be able to attend. So that's on March 15th, I'll be going.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Building and grounds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Geez, I'm, okay. Mr. Hockman?
We're just going to keep switching seats.
I know, you're a little off.
We got to get the dog back. Building and grounds, we had a subcommittee meeting last week that was robustly attended. Mayor Betancourt was present, school committee member Amico, school committee member Swanson, Superintendent Vidala, business manager Joe Scanlon, and City Councilor Dave Gamache, and Jim Hafey, our facilities manager for the city. We did talk about the lighting issue at the high school. We spent a lot of time talking about the lighting issue at the high school, so thank you, Ms. LePage, for your communication, and Mr. Mayor for taking that up. We also talked about the auditorium at the high school. If you recall, there was Mr. Simmons reported that there was a leak at the stage on the high school. Mr. Hafey has investigated that and determined preliminarily that it was a smoke vent or a flue above the stage that was where the water infiltration was coming in through. I made a phone call after learning that. I made a phone call to Chief Daly to get someone from his department involved with that, with Mr. Hafey, and I'm hoping by next meeting we'll get a report on either a cost for a repair or what we're capable of doing in order to prevent the water infiltration in a safe manner. We have to keep the smoke flue functional for obvious reasons. And then we did talk about the Kiley School, something that's, we talked about 2 other things. The Kiley School, which has been kind of on our plate for 4.5 years now. Asked Mr. Hafey to get an updated estimate for renovating that school to being functional. He came back to with a request that we as a committee talk about how we want that building used. So I don't intend to bring that up tonight, but making an agenda item for our next March meeting. What is it that we want to use that building for? Because it would change the investigation and the information that he would look at for determining costs for that building. But I can tell you that Councilor Gamache, who was invited to the Building and Grounds meeting specifically for that, the Kiley is in his ward, was very supportive of the conversation, and I was happy to see that. And then the last thing that I just want to report is, in conjunction with the Kiley, when the administration moved out of that building, they moved down to 27 Lowell Street. Last meeting, we talked about the lease, the initial term of that lease ending June 30th of 2022. Mayor Betancourt successfully negotiated a one-year extension for that lease, so the administration will stay in that property through at least June 30th of 2023, which gives us an opportunity to start looking for other locations for the administration. But I want to at least report that that lease was or you reported it was extended. I don't know if papers have been signed, or I don't know how that's gone.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. I did want to report, I did speak with Jim Hafey today specifically about the Kiley School, and he has 2 meetings scheduled next week with companies to review the Kiley School, and I imagine we'll be going with one or the other in terms of a review. We did put together the paperwork from the earlier reviews that were done of the building and estimates and things of that nature too. So I do know that there is some work going on there. Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Next committee is Special Education Parent Advisory Board. Mr. Olympio?
Yes, I'm looking to schedule a meeting on March 30th, Wednesday, 6 o'clock. I'll probably post that in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. City Council and Legislative Delegation. Mrs. Carpenter?
Nothing to report.
And Redistricting Ad Hoc Subcommittee, Mr. Hockman?
We intend on meeting March 28th here at the Higgins, 6 o'clock.
Terrific. Okay, if there's nothing further, our next regular scheduled meeting is Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, 2 weeks from tonight. And as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Vidala and I will coordinate with Marge Marcarelli and come together and propose some dates for our budget reviews. Okay. All right, thank you everyone for a good meeting. Motion to adjourn. Unanimous vote.